Welcome back at 6:25. We are ready to begin Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is a little bit shorter than the other two chapters, so we probably should be able to wrap this up within 30 to 40 minutes. Chapter 3, Emotions, Attitudes, and Job Satisfaction. Remember, we'll talk about job satisfaction also a little bit later in the course. Feelings deserve our attention. So let's look at the study questions we hope to be able to address as we go through this next about 40 minutes, I think. What are emotions and moods? How do emotions and moods influence behavior? What are attitudes and how do they influence behavior? And what is job satisfaction and why is it important? Affect is a range of emotions and moods that all of us experience in our lifetime. Emotions themselves are strong feelings, either positive or negative, that are directed toward someone or something. Now, there are people who would tell you that you should never direct your emotion to an inanimate object, something. Emotional intelligence, otherwise shown as EI on this slide, is the ability to understand our emotions. We go back to self-concept before our self-concept, our thought of self-concept, locus of control. All this plays into this in some manners. Understand our emotions and the emotions of others, and to use that understanding to effectively negotiate, effectively traverse, effectively manage, as it says here, relationships. So we have to know our own. And by the way, not only we have to know our own, we have to be able to control our own. And then we need to understand them and others as well. So, you know, when we're going through this course, you can kind of think of this in some respects as a little diagnosis and some of, not all things, but some things here. And we have to pay attention to ourselves, our surroundings, the things that we come in contact with, and then behaviors. This slide, figure 3.1, which you can see on page 55, is emotional intelligence competencies. Self-awareness, we talked about. I called it self-concept. I should have called it self-awareness, but it's kind of the same thing in a way. Social awareness, relationship management, and self-management. So we have to do these two things on the left-hand side first in ourselves before we can do the other two things, and especially being able to manage relationships. Notice what it says, rapport, getting along, making use of emotions to build and maintain good relationships. Not easy to do, but something if we work at, we can do. Self-conscious emotions and social emotions. These arrived, the first, arrived from internal sources. Notice what it talks about: shame, guilt, embarrassment, etc. It also has pride in there. And it helps us control our relationships with other people. And social emotions arise from external sources. So self-consciousness internal, social emotions external. And remember, we can control the internal. We have absolute control over internal. We don't always have control over outside, external sources, pity, joy, envy, etc., and information. Moods, on the other hand, are generalized positive or negative feelings or states of mind. Probably just a second. Now, here we are, difference between emotions and moods. Emotion. I was really angry when Professor Nitpicker criticized my presentation. So what we did here, we identified the source and the cause, tried to be brief, it's an episode, and it's action-oriented, linked with behavior, and it can turn into a mood. By the way, you can see this displayed at figure 3.2, the top of page 57. A mood, on the other hand, oh, I just don't have energy to get through much today. I felt down all week. We didn't really identify a source here, but notice it can be long-lasting. Pardon me. Give me a second. Can either be positive or negative. It's less action-oriented, and it can influence our emotions. These are major emotions that we talked about before. Some good, some bad. And we have to be able to control those to the best of our ability. Now let's look at emotion and mood contagion, emotional labor, and then emotional dissonance. Emotion and mood contagion, this is when what we're going through spills over onto others and affects them. Emotional labor relates to need to show certain emotions in order to perform well, whereas emotional dissonance is how we actually feel are inconsistent with what we do. So it's a little bit different than what I said here. It's a disconnect between what we actually feel and what we try to show to the outside world, how we do, how we act, etc. A couple of concepts here for you. Deep acting, where we try to modify the feeling to better fit the situation, and then surface acting, where we really hide our true feelings and display different ones. That's kind of a dissonance thing again. Display rules. This is the degree to which it's all right to display emotions. And when can we think about that? Well, joy over a child graduating from school. Joy over receiving a promotion. Maybe letting your emotions run wild when your favorite sports team wins, that they were not expected to win, for instance. So these cases, these times, it's okay to display our emotions. It's all right. People expect it, and in some cases, it's accepted. Now, this slide is kind of a busy slide in a way, but notice what the two outcomes, or two results if you prefer, that these lead to: job satisfaction, job performance. Work environment, these moods and contagions are characteristics of the job demands, emotional labor requirements, daily hassles, etc. emotional reactions, positive or negative. And then personal predisposition, personality and mood. And these directly either affect or lead to job satisfaction and job performance. Now, let's go down here and read the subnote just a second. I think it's important to look at this. Affective theory says emotions, moods, and human behavior. It discusses these. The basic notion of the theory is that our emotions and moods are influenced by events that involve other people and situations. These moods and emotions then influence work performance and satisfaction in ourselves and in other people. Now, let's just examine this for a second. If you're in a job setting and if you're in a team or you're an individual working in a job setting, and the person that works with you or close to you or across the room from you is consistently doing things well, that usually tends to raise the level of performance for all people because they see someone doing something well. Normally, when people perform well, they're satisfied with their job. There are people who will tell you, we talk about this a little later on here, that job satisfaction leads to job performance and vice versa. Some say there's some kind of a disconnect, and we'll examine that. But think of yourself if you have a person who's always down on something. That affects everything, affects everybody, affects performance, and affects satisfaction. That may affect your satisfaction as well. Attitude. This is just our predisposition to respond in a certain way, positive or negative, to someone or something in our environment. Predisposition to respond positively or negatively. We have three things to look at here, and then we have a little graph that we're going to talk about. This is how attitudes are, what our attitudes are and how they influence behavior. Three components here: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. Cognitive speaks about our underlying beliefs, opinions, etc., philosophies, based upon information or knowledge that we have or that we've gathered. Affective, the specific feelings regarding the personal impact of the antecedent condition, what's happened before, evidenced through the cognitive component. So we're going back. And then the behavioral is how we're going to behave based upon our attitude. So if we look at the slide, which we can see on page 81, on page 61, is how we move through this. So let's take how they have this set up. Example: my job lacks responsibility, but work is important to me. That's our cognition. The effect is I don't like my job, and the behavior is I'm going to quit. So you see how these things are interrelated. My job lacks responsibility, but work is important. It's important to me. I like to work. I like to do things. I like to create things, whatever that happens to be. but where I am, I have no responsibility. That's my cognition. That's what I think. That's what I know based upon everything. So then what does that cause? What's that affect? I don't like my job because I don't have any responsibility. What's my behavior? I'm going to quit. I can't fix any of this. I'm going to quit. Now, cognitive dissonance, we've talked about this before. I'm going to say it a little bit differently here. This is the inconsistency between our attitudes and our behavior. Between an individual's attitudes and/or between attitudes and behavior. So it's inconsistent. It can be reduced by changing the underlying attitude, changing future behavior, if we can do that, and then maybe developing new ways to do things or rationalizing what's going on. Now, here we are to job satisfaction. This is an attitude that we have on the job, reflecting either positively or negatively. Now, I think if we say job satisfaction, we're going to take that negative out of the equation, but that's okay. It's here. We'll talk about it. Toward the job, toward his or her coworkers, and toward the work environment. And we'll get a little bit more into this job satisfaction thing when we talk about Hertzberg's theory in Chapter 5, which is coming up next week. Job involvement is just the extent to which I'm involved in my job. Or the better word here that I didn't use, dedicated to my job. So I'm wrapped up in my job. I like my job. There's job satisfaction, and I perform pretty well. So it's all wrapped up into a package that is together. Now, this particular slide talks about organizational commitment. I need to get down here so make sure we don't miss anything. Miss anything here. This is the degree of loyalty an individual feels towards the organization. And notice there are three things that come up here: rational commitment, emotional, and engagement. The rational thing is that serves our needs: financial, developmental, professional interests. That's the rational part. The emotional part reflects our feelings toward what we do is important. Not only is it important, it's valuable and has a benefit to others. Now, those others are not only others in the organization. They are. It could be in our team, could be in our department, whatever that happens to be, but also to what we're doing to affect people outside the organization in delivering them a quality service or quality product or good. And then engagement is a positive feeling of connecting with the organization. Now, the first connection may be with the job because it's a little bit easier for the individual to do that. But if he or she connects with the job, then they're going to be able to connect with the organization. Now, this is a thing, a Minnesota satisfaction questionnaire and the job descriptive index, MSQ or JDI, which both talk about components of the job and job satisfaction, and the manager should be concerned about. There is a sample survey to take. We can't do it this way, but I do suggest that you either get into MSQ or JDI and try to take that just for your own edification. Here are the facets of job satisfaction. Notice what the first thing is up there. It's the job itself. Is the job meaningful? Can I come to that job and get something out of it, as well as give something to it? Quality of supervision, relationships, opportunities for promotion, and then rewards and pay. Those are the 5 facets of job satisfaction. Now, obviously, everybody's not satisfied with the job, so we may find some withdrawal behaviors. And those usually come with employees who are frequently absent or frequently late or frequently both. They tend to be more prone to leave the organization or, as it notes here, be on the lookout for different employment. Absenteeism, specifically employee absenteeism, and turnover will result in loss of experience and increased cost for replacements, recruiting efforts, etc. Some companies will tolerate some turnover. Other companies don't like to tolerate any turnover. But what I say to you is this: you have to determine, and we'll talk about this later in chapter 4, you have to determine what's causing the turnover or the absenteeism. Make sure that you get to the root cause and you address the root cause and not some symptom. Notice here down this, the last thing on the slide down here. Employers tend to overestimate job satisfaction and underestimate the amount of job seeking that employees are doing. Not enough emphasis being placed on retention strategies. Just simply can't have people walking out the door and using it as a revolving door. It doesn't help anybody. Organizational citizenship with the employee means he or she is going to take the extra step, go the extra mile to make sure things are done. Organizational citizenship behaviors advance performance of the organization as a whole, and that's something that the organization really wants to do, and they try to promote those kinds of things. Now we're going to talk here a little bit about the relationship between job satisfaction and job performance. So 3 theories here. Satisfaction causes performance, performance causes satisfaction, and rewards cause satisfaction and performance. This one, satisfaction causes performance. To increase performance, make the employees happy. So you need to be, and we'll talk about relationship-oriented management in chapter 12, relationship between managers and their subordinates. Notice here what it says is the job satisfaction is not an adequate predictor of work performance. They use the term consistent, but adequate will serve our purposes. Performance causes satisfaction. Create high performance, and I don't think you can create high performance, but I think you can urge high performance or motivate people to put things to motivate them to perform at a high level. as a pathway to job satisfaction. Performance leads to rewards, and that in turn leads to satisfaction. And then finally, performance leads to satisfaction only if rewards are perceived to be fair and equitable. That comes to the equity theory, which we'll talk about when we get to chapter 6. But it's important to think about this thing. So what we're getting from each of these theories is some pluses and minuses. And this is very important about the rewards, to take this into mind and to think about it. If an individual doesn't think the reward is worth the performance that he or she is putting out, they're not going to do much about it. Here we have down here intervening variables and moderating variables. We have performance on the left, value and rewards, and then satisfaction. But between the valued rewards and satisfaction, we have perceived equity of the rewards. So that's very important to think about. This theory, rewards cause both satisfaction and performance. I want to tell you, I don't agree with this theory. I'll tell you that right off the bat. Because how do you measure the right reward to get satisfaction? So here it is, right rewards allocated in the right way will influence both performance and job satisfaction. Performance contingency says the size of the reward varies in proportion to the level of performance. I really, this is our last slide here. I'd like to go back to this slide. We have to think about this. And the thinking is right rewards allocated properly will lead to both performance and job satisfaction. I really have a hard time with that, and always have had a hard time with that. I'm not trying to influence you, but I want you to think through that process and think if you agree or don't agree with it. The contingency here is size of reward varies in proportion to the level of the performance. So we have to think about that. And this is the last slide for you. It's just a thought process for you and how you're going to think about something. If you won the lotto, won the lottery, whatever you want to call it, would you ever work again? Consider what we get out of work. Notice what it says here: social identity, accomplishment, achievement, etc. How would you replace those? Very interesting question. I do not have an answer for it. I seldom play a lotto. I can't remember the last time I did, as a matter of fact. So I don't think I have an answer for that. But it is something we need to think about and come to grips with. If we did win it, how would we replace those things that we get accomplishment from, etc. Not saying it can't be done, but it's something we certainly need to think about. Well, that brings us to the end. As I said, this chapter was much shorter. We spent about 40 minutes, not quite. Next week, we'll do chapters 4 and 5, perception, attribution, and learning, chapter 4, and then chapter 5, beginning the first of our motivation theories. So I thank you for your attendance tonight. I will get you some information as to where you can locate the lectures, and I look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thank you and good night.